Good morning. Wow. We have some terribly sad breaking news that I'm sure many of you have heard about right now. But Hollywood titan, Democratic activist, and all around mensch, Rob Reiner, and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, a titan on her own behalf, were found dead yesterday afternoon in their home in the Brentwood neighborhood of Los Angeles. From the reporting that we have heard and from my sources who live there, and some of whom are friends or were friends with Carl, not Carl, I'm sorry, that was his father, with Rob, their daughter found them there. And what we know is also that some outlets have reported. This includes People Magazine and TMZ, not major. I wouldn't consider them major news sources, but between their reporting and my own sources, the suspect so tragically in their murder, they were found stabbed to death. The suspect is one of their sons. So this is a lot to take in on a Monday morning, especially when this broke yesterday on a Sunday at the end of what was an absolutely devastating weekend. So I want to try to celebrate with you the good aspects of life, including Carl Reiner's life. But where I want to begin before we talk about Carl Reiner is leading here with love and solidarity. So specifically, I think you heard about it happened on Sunday, or it was reported Sunday, our time, in Australia. There is a place called Bondi Beach, which is a crescent-shaped beach in Sydney. And there was a Hanukkah party on the beach, which sounds so delightful to me because when you live like we do, I'm assuming most of you, maybe some of you come to me from the Southern Hemisphere, but I live in the Northern Hemisphere, and Hanukkah is a holiday that we celebrate when it's freezing cold where I am, where the nights are shorter, and where it's dark so early. And what Hanukkah represents is finding hope against hope, seeking light, even when there's not enough fuel to give us the promise of illumination. So there they were, members of the Jewish community out on this beach when two gunmen, apparently a father who was maybe 50 and a son who I believe might be 25 or 26, had long guns and began shooting into this crowd. And I think it's important to know that this appeared to be a targeted attack, completely anti-Semitic attack on these people, members of I think of them as my people, right? Out there, just trying to celebrate a holiday from these two men. Now, what we know about the Bondi shooting is not just about the shooters and not just about the victims, but also so importantly about an incredible incredible hero. And just to be clear, 15 people perished as a result of this mass shooting in Sydney. And the 50-year-old father was shot and killed by the police. However, the 24-year-old son was apprehended and is hospitalized. We are considering it, and Australia is considering it, a terrorist incident. And I believe what I understand is that it began around 6:30 p.m. And the one of them, I think maybe the son, first of them, they took positions on like an elevated bridge and began just shooting. One of them was, I think, on the ground. And the names of, I'm sorry, but I don't have the names right now of these gunmen. Hold on. Give me a moment. The suspects here were identified by the Prime Minister of Australia. The 24-year-old was named, who was in custody, is named Naveed Akram. And I believe that he is Australian born. I don't know the name. I'm not sure of the name of his father. However, that is not what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about love and solidarity, about the courage of a 43-year-old man, a Muslim man named Ahmed El Ahmed. He's a fruit seller and a father of two, who in the middle of this mass shooting did the unthinkable. I don't know many people who would have courage. He crouched down behind a car in a parking lot and leaped out and tackled one of the gunmen and pulled his gun away from him, turned it on him. Unfortunately, because there was a second gunman, he got shot at. But I want to report to you, of course, that he has lived. I think he was shot in the hand and the arm. He is at the hospital. I think so far, I have not seen him speak to the press. Someone claiming to be a cousin has. So I want to share with you some reporting that had come out of Australia about his courage in the face of this violent anti-Semitic mass shooting. And I want to remind us that we are stronger together. We have more in common than that what divides us apart. So let me add this to the stage right here, and let's go ahead and watch.
Yeah, what a horrific story we heard just then, Nat, and let's tell you, it is replicated on this side of Bondi Pavilion as well. I've been speaking to people all morning. There was one man, he was from England. He had just arrived in Sydney 4 hours ago. Next thing he knows, he was piling bodies on stretchers. We've had representatives of the Jewish community down here, friends of Ali Schlanger as well. They have been paying tribute to him, laying those flowers. But it is a ghost town down here, Nat. You know, Bondi down here, it is normally bumper to bumper this time of the day. A beautiful day like this, that is certainly not the case, and that is because we have this major exclusion zone in place right now as police continue that investigation. Of course, we're learning more and more about those two gunmen, a 50-year-old man and his 24-year-old son. The father, he was shot and killed here by police. He was a registered firearm owner, and police now have custody of those 6 firearms. But really what everyone down here is talking about is the hero of yesterday afternoon, Ahmed El Ahmed. We've all seen those images now. They are incredible. They have been beamed right around the world of him, the 42-year-old father, the fruit shop owner, creeping through that car park yesterday afternoon, crash tackling that 50-year-old gunman, disarming him and then disposing of that weapon. Unfortunately for him, he was caught up in some more fire there. He sustained a number of gunshot wounds, and we understand he is still in hospital at the moment, and his family have confirmed that he is now preparing for surgery. But this was his family talking to 7 News a short time ago.
Absolutely, he's a hero. Absolutely, because maybe he can lose his life to save the other people. I hope everyone in Australia wish everything is good for Ahmed to get back to his family.
What an absolute legend, an absolute hero. He deserves an award of the highest honour. I want to show you these images too here, Nat. Have a look at this. This is the leftovers of the panic of yesterday. So we've had a little army of volunteers and they have combed the beach this morning, and it is quite eerie to actually look at. They've been pairing up those thongs. They have been folding those towels. We have swim bags here, bags filled with keys and phones. They're currently at the lifeguard tower just behind us there. And we've had people turning up all morning. This gentleman here he is, just sort of picking through what is left, trying to find any of his stuff. We've had families down here because in that panic and in that chaos of yesterday, they had to just drop everything. We've been hearing those stories all morning. It was a scene of absolute chaos.
So, obviously, my friends, I'm speechless. I'm speechless. I would hope that I would have the courage and the physical strength to do that. So I want us to hold that in our heart as we move through some of the other news of the weekend. As you know, there was on Saturday also news of a mass shooting at Brown University by a suspect who, by the way, is not in custody. They have released someone who was a person of interest. Unfortunately, this person's name was released. He was not involved in the shooting. And let me just be clear. How do we know? Where do they get this person from? I think they use geolocation so that I think they probably looked to see what cell phones were pinging off the towers in that area. And somehow they came up with this person. Maybe, I don't know why, he was questioned and let go. There is no suspect yet known. What we know is there was a particular engineering building which was open for exams and review sessions at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. The course for which there was a review session was an economics course taught by a Jewish professor. And she was not at the review session. However, her teaching assistant, who was like a senior, who was leading that review session, is a Black man. So it's not clear if these were hate motivated or not. But this person came in to the review session and began shooting. And there are numerous people who have died and who were injured. Brown was on a lockdown. And then yesterday, the school dismissed the students in the middle of exams and said, for those students concerned about, they're going to figure out what to do at this point about the academic side of their education and their grading and all of that, but everyone is sent home at that point. Now, you would say this was shocking, but of course, it's entirely predictable. And when our country decided to move on from Sandy Hook after Adam Lanza, whose parents knew he had guns, went in there and murdered elementary school children and teachers. When we moved on from that, we could move on from anything. And I want to remind you that laws make a difference. That when during the Bill Clinton era, when legislation was passed to and it's lawful under the Second Amendment to restrict access to sales of certain types of automatic weapons, these kinds of mass shootings, these mass casualties did decline. But we've taken a different path down. What is far too commonplace is that our young people are now sometimes subject not to just one, but more school shootings. 2 brown students were survivors of the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. I don't have words for this. I wish I could tell you that there was a hero who recognized the gait of the man in the black clothes on the security camera walking in or leaving the building at Brown University. I wish I could tell you that there were enough heroes to tackle all the people who would do wrong. But let's remember, even at Bondi Beach, 15 people were still murdered. And let me tell you, it wasn't the story that America gives. And by the way, in Australia, they are now looking to do something about this, to address this in a legislative fashion. But let me just say, generally speaking, in America, we tell this story that the reason why we need everyone to have guns is because it takes, if you have a bad guy with a gun, the only thing to stop him is a good guy with a gun. Well, here we had in Australia a good guy with courage who tackled him. And let's remember the school in Texas where there were police officers. I think it was called Uvalde. I'm now forgetting the name of it. You might, let me just say, Uvalde shooting, where the actual police officers who were security, who were supposed to go help the children, were flipping cowards and didn't. And they had guns. The problems, my friends, here are the guns. And the problems here, my friends, are also hate and untreated mental illness. And in this country, we're not doing enough about either. Now, I want to, before I get to Rob Reiner, I want to also mention some huge news from Friday, which is more images came in from the Epstein estate. This comes from the Virgin Islands, where he had 2 of his own private islands, and the law enforcement authorities, I believe they would have been in St. Thomas, had provided to the House Committee, the House Government Oversight Committee, numerous files. And I think it's like something like another 95,000 files or images. And so on Friday, several of those were released by the Democrats on the Oversight Committee. I am not going to share those here today. Happy to talk about that later this week and provide links. But suffice it to say, it does not do anything to dispel suspicions that Donald Trump and many extremely wealthy and well-connected men, including leaders, political leaders, were closely involved with Jeff Epstein. And there's also evidence that these young women and girls who were trafficked were that what was done to them was highly dangerous in some instances, based on what we have seen, could have caused injury or death. Now, I want to also add that when asked, Democratic members of the House Intelligence Committee said, we're only showing, of course, some of these photographs. There are things that are just too hard to share right now with the public. And obviously they're redacting faces and so on of the victims. But I will leave it at that right now, because that is not what we are talking about. But when I tell you this was a very hard weekend, this is what I am talking about. Now, I'd like to celebrate the life of Rob Reiner. And I also want to refrain from naming the son's name who is suspected of having committed this murder, because there's not been any kind of law enforcement confirmation of that. But we do know that the particular person who is being spoken about had is, I'm trying to think, he must be in his 30s, and had a history of drug addiction and mental illness. I'm hearing separately, which made with this kind of dual diagnosis makes it very difficult to get help. What I know about him that's reported, and that he and his father, Rob, had also worked on together, was that he had been homeless for a number of years due to his addiction and probably also mental illness. And they had made a film together about that experience. And I think there was a hope that, that he would get better. The film about this son, loosely based on their relationship, was called Being Charlie. Now, let's talk a little bit about, before we go, a little bit about what Rob Reiner gave to us. Because, I think you might know what he directed, but you might not realize kind of the impact he made. So let me just be clear. Many of us here know Rob Reiner first because of his role playing Meathead, a guy named Mike, on All in the Family. He was married to Archie Bunker, the sort of unfortunately lovable but angry patriarch Queensman who was not able to come to terms with his own racism and sexism, and who actually became a foil for Americans to look at. This is a show made by Norman Lear, who himself recently just passed away, to examine what was not being examined on television, to invite into their living room the intergenerational conflicts between these young hippies and these sort of silent generation parents. And he was in that role and won, I think, 2 Emmy Awards in 1970s. Of course, he is Carl Reiner's son. Carl Reiner, who paired up with Mel Brooks, brilliant comedian. Carl passed away recently. Mel Brooks, who I think might even be 100, is still with us. And boy, I would not want to be him or his family members now. This is utterly tragic. Rob was a son to Mel Brooks. Now, let me be clear. I don't know Rob Reiner. Millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people here and across the globe don't know him. But there is something about, we talk about parasocial relationships. When someone in the public eye who we admire, we feel like we know them. Like someone, I'm just thinking they're just people that we can identify with. Sometimes they're actors. In this case, it might be Rob Reiner because of his political activism recently, but also because of the work that he has done in Hollywood. So let me share with you right now some of his films. In the first 10 years of Rob Reiner's making films, he put out something like 7 films in 10 years, all of which are iconic. You may not realize that Carl directed the cult classic, This Is Spinal Tap. And of course, there are famous lines from all of these films, including, dial it up to 11, if I'm getting that right. He also, after that, also produced Stand By Me. Stand By Me, it loosely based on a Stephen King novel, is a absolute classic. It is something I remember taking my younger brother, who's 10 years younger than me, to when I was a teenager. Next came The Princess Bride, which has given us so much, including when the line "inconceivable" and the retort, "I don't think that word means what you think it does." these actors in there, Robin Wright and Billy Crystal and Carrie Ewells, then I don't think you could have been alive in the 1980s and not seen at least once When Harry Met Sally, starring Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan. What you may not know about this is, I'm gonna go over here. What you may not know about When Harry Met Sally is that famous scene in the deli where, and I want to share this with you. It might be a spoiler alert, so I won't give you the details, but let's just say there's a famous scene in a Jewish deli where Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal are there in New York. And there is like that, you'll be howling after this scene. And the person who makes a cameo and steals the scene happens to be Rob Reiner's mother. Okay, so let me just go back to these Reiner films. Of course, When Harry Met Sally. But that wasn't enough. Misery, starring Kathy Bates and James Caan. This is based on the Stephen King book about a fan who takes an author she loves captive. I mean, can you believe what we are talking about back to back? These are the films he made. And, I just, still we're in the first decade of his filmmaking. And if that wasn't enough, then we have A Few Good Men. A Few Good Men. Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, which gives us, of course, the indispensable line, "You can't handle the truth." Okay, so of course there's more. But I think to deal with our grief, maybe the best thing to do is acknowledge it, not to think it's weird that we could love someone so deeply that we never knew, that we can appreciate their artwork, and that we can hold in our heart the utter tragedy of the murder of both Rob and Michelle Reiner without knowing the full story about whether it was the son and what motivated him, without thinking about their last moments. Because we are never defined by one moment. We should not be defined about the way in which we exit this world, because all of us come in and all of us go out of the world here. And that is not who we are. That is not the impressions and the love that we spread. And again, what I want to have us leave with here is the hero, right? Ahmed El-Ahmed. To be a hero doesn't just take tackling someone with a gun who is hurting others. To be a hero is to step in where you can and protect others who are being targeted emotionally, physically, and do so in a way that actually helps them, that doesn't center ourselves. And it's okay to center yourself a little bit, but I mean, to be there for people. And also to recognize that we can't heal everybody. It's not the outcome that matters. It is, you look at Reiner's family. Every family is complicated stories. People have real issues. And my biggest fear for all of us is anyone who has a family member with a mental illness or a history of violence is probably shaking in their boots right now. Maybe panicking, worrying, thinking about what they can do. And I think it's really important, if they have a therapist or some other ways, to seek help about your fear, because the odds of this happening are very, very low. But this, of course, triggers all kinds of panic, probably all kinds of shame and confusion and fear of loss of control. And so what I would say is find the help that you need. Reach out to friends and others. Take care of yourself with this news. I'm going to leave you with that. Today, no music. I'm not playing any outgoing music, no crazy town. I'm in a bit of a stage right now of mourning all of these losses, and feel that to leave you now in peace with your thoughts, with your friends, with your family, and with your love, hopefully, for Reiner and for all of humanity, and especially for, I send a beautiful prayer out to, I send this prayer out to Ahmed and to everyone who has taken a chance for somebody else and made a difference that you may never, ever know. I will see you all tomorrow morning. Thank you for listening, and thank you to my mods. You are incredible. I don't know what I would do without you, AJ, Deb, and Jason. And tomorrow I will talk to you a bit more about the plans for our group Zoom on December 20th. Thanks all.